Okay, Guelphs and Ghibellines. So, we'll try to make this somewhat short. First of all, very, very much like the Men of Iron series. Throw in a little bit of Great Battles of History with, the cohesion hits type thing. But if you're interested in the Men of Iron stuff, and you want to see maybe a little bit stretching further towards the Great Battles of History, that's always been my complaint about Men of Iron, is that it just feels a little too abstracted. This gives you just a little touch more, and there's some clever mechanisms in play. So let me talk about the game rules aspects first, kind of how I feel about some of the ways they work here. So in particular, the continuation, the interruption, that all works fairly well, very much like the Men of Iron. You don't end up booting things over to the other player automatically. I like that. You can actually double continuation with the same people. I don't think that's allowed in Men of Iron, if I recall correctly, but you can switch back and forth between two. But here's what fixes all that. So in Men of Iron, you had, oh look, the battle's just happening in one place. The fact that these things decrease, that your capability to command troops just decreases, and your possibility of actually getting a continuation or an interruption decreases, that is an act of brilliance. It actually flows, it prevents the battle from just being in one location for the entire scope of the game, which is one problem that Men of Iron kind of had. It doesn't resolve another issue, though, that Men of Iron had, which is once units kind of engage, if it's no longer advantageous to either player to really necessarily roll for attacks there, the battle kind of stops there and they're engaged, and that feels weird. You can say that there's some sort of abstraction going on. Yeah, there's some low-scale fighting or something, but, not enough to really force things to change. The rules don't really support that, though. They're a little bit weaker. Okay. So, anything else here? The battles themselves in this, they're a mixed bag, but they feel, the three of them, none of them feel like you're sitting on something that's completely unwinnable by your side. Some of them are tough, but some of the stuff in the Men of Iron series, especially in the first game of it, felt like they were totally inaccurate. There's also, not inaccurate, totally unwinnable by one side or another. Some of them felt like they were inaccurate, like the wrong side could win it too many times. In this case, there's a tendency for the scenarios to have kind of a special rules scripting. That can be a little annoying because you have to keep looking things up, especially when you're first learning the game. There's no real hey, here's just the game simply scenario, I don't think. They all have special conditions in them to kind of help drive the events that actually happened in the battle in terms of treachery or whatever. The first and earliest battle, the first one presented in the game, is actually probably the most complex of all. But they all have their little pieces that makes it a little harder to approach. But once you've played one or two battles with this, you're fine. Now, that's where kind of the problem comes. My third battle, I felt really comfortable with this system. But there is only 3 battles in here. And this was an expensive box. And that's because the production quality is so high. The larger size counters, obviously the nice graphics on them, but that's kind of de rigueur. Very heavy stock paper. The rules are actually pretty good, about on the high end of GMT rules. So you kind of get the feeling of, is it the designer or the developer? But you definitely get the feeling that Europa Simulations is trying to put out some really good high quality product here as a whole. The game seems, reasonably well tested, etc., fairly balanced, and there are no real glaring problems that I ran into at all. So, if you like Men of Iron, and if you're interested in Italian medieval battles, ladder is probably kind of this slender thing, but some of us are just, oh my God, give me some more medieval, give me something like that. This is a really nice addition. Now, the problem though is, of course, you're paying a good deal for the components, etc. I would have rather paid a little less or paid the same amount and gotten, you know, a handful more battles, kind of like GMT tends to do. Now, I know that there's another company that puts out this designer's work, Acies, A-C-I-E-S. Marco did a review of one of the designs using the exact same system. He's got 2 more boxed games. The one that Marco reviewed only has 2 battles in. Less impressive in terms of the components from what I can see on the video. But if you're like me and you're eating up the idea of medieval stuff, you're definitely putting yourself in the, I got my eye looking out for this if I can ever see it somewhere. This one I got by a lucky bit of serendipity, or just real fortune here. This was a game that came out, and I don't remember what it ran, but I think it was around 60, 65 euros or something like that. And then it got imported. Thought Hammer had copies of it. They tried to sell it at 80, probably around 80 bucks is my guess or whatever. I managed to get my copy, I think, for around 40. And they had a big sale on a number of items. This was one of them, just trying to clear out stuff that wasn't moving. And at $40, it's a good game, I guess. Still feels a little on the expensive side for, you know, what you're getting with 3 battles, none of which are really big. Because when you think about it, if you're me, you're playing new games all the time and never get around. But my spirit, if I had this sitting on my shelf and had, say, the smaller collection that I used to, it would still be something that didn't come out all that often. You know, I'm going to get a playing or 2 out of each battle, and that is it. And at this point in my life, maybe that 1 playing is it. It's also not the kind of game, and it's actually tailored for my kind of player, because it's not the kind of game that I can see people digging up, you know, unless this was one of your very few war games that you had at all. I can't see people, you know, coming to it again and again and again. It's, you know, a slender topic. It's not a terribly competitive game. There's a lot of luck in it. There's, you know, it's interesting, it's fun, it's nice to watch, but I don't think that it's the kind of thing like, say, a No Retreat or something that people are going to spend, you know, several playings a year just getting really decent at it. It's just not worth that for that kind of play. It's worth it's very pleasant and a different kind of play. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Unfortunately, you know, I mean, if you have tons of money, buying this and the other editions, which I think run around 40 or 50 euros each, plus shipping from Italy, you know, you can afford to do that. But a couple hours of fun with a board game when I have so many others, it's tough to justify that kind of price, even if this is a very good game overall.